introductions, we're going to hear from Mr. Nicholas Reynolds, who is the Vice President of Red Sea Housing Services. So, Mr. Nicholas, can we please welcome you on stage?
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you. My name's been mentioned several times already, so hopefully I don't let you all down. I want to take you on a bit of a journey. It's great to have already seen some fantastic technologies. It was brilliant to see the background of the word arsenal. I did not know that, and it actually provides a little segue to my first slide. And I want to take us around the world. I'm from Australia. I'm a modular design professional. I've worked in China. I've recently worked in the USA for the last 2 years. Now I'm working here in the Middle East. And what I love about working here is the combination of nationalities, the combination of ideas, and the combination of minds that are solving problems every day. In 1857, this village, which was built in Melbourne, in Australia, was entirely built in Bristol. And if you can read the word at the bottom, which is a bit hard, but it was called a manufactory. So not a factory, it was a manufactory. And now we're moving on to digital printing in factories that can make something. And the example I've got to lead on from that, Elon Musk talks about living on Mars. And what they say when they build a space station on Mars, when they build houses on Mars, they will not be taking construction materials. They'll be taking 3D printers, and they're going to be using Mars dust and magic chemicals and printing their own products. So that's already in development. There's already people working on that. So from 1857 to maybe 2057, there's a 200-year journey. Another example, I always get asked with modular buildings, it's temporary, it's never going to last. You know, surely it's built of materials that are not the same as conventional building. It's entirely not the case. That's a church that was built in 1897, so nearly 120 years old, in Darwin, in Australia. So a tropical environment, wood and corrugated iron, it's still there. It is conventional materials. It's just a new, innovative way of putting product together and saving some of the things that Collie has pointed out earlier, time saving, cost savings that you have in projects. So just a quick introduction, what is modular construction? Red Sea Housing have been doing it for 40 years. We've been building hotels, but we've been building big flat hotels, 8,000 rooms, single level. Workforce camps in Ghana, in Angola, in Kazakhstan, all around the world. In factories, you can see it's like the Henry Ford model. The entire building is constructed inside a factory. All of the traditional trades are there. We have electricians, we have plumbers, we have plasterers, we have supervisors, we have QA, QC people, we have clients representatives in the factory, making sure that what's built is to their specification. I'm going to take us to some other examples. This is again in Australia. It's a apartment building. You can see it's a module. You can see it's part of a building. It's leaving the factory. Inside the modules, everything is complete. All of the FF&E is in place. All of the fixtures, plumbing, tiles, all of the finishes, including in hotels, the furniture can be in the room. I worked last year with Marriott at the headquarters in Bethesda in Maryland, and when they realised that they could save 3 weeks in having to fit out rooms with furniture because the rooms could leave the factory with the furniture in it, that was an amazing thought to them, that could be another 3 weeks they could have the rooms open, generating income rather than opening boxes and setting up IKEA kits. A company in Australia, some of these pictures are from a company called Unitized Build, who are one of the world leaders in doing modular construction. The product is wrapped and sent wherever it's got to go. The outback of Australia, in the desert, to Kazakhstan on a ship, using standard logistics, then taken to site and put together. In this case, that's an apartment building in Melbourne. And what I think that really demonstrates is that there is no limit to the design and the creativity that can be included into a modular building. So for the architects, the designers, the end users here today, you are not limited by what you can do. It's a matter of using your creativity, using the innovations, using new materials, the idea of the shower that we saw earlier, other products that are seen all over the world, but maybe not here yet. I think they're all coming. So modular construction, when you build in a factory like that, it can be fast. You can save up to 50% on your on-site construction, because while the rooms are being built in the factory, the on-site construction of the site works, the foundations, maybe a ground floor podium in concrete in traditional construction is happening. The modules come and are stacked on top, as you saw in that previous picture. It's cost efficient because you can save a lot of time and money in labour, in procurement, less waste, less theft on site, less loss, scheduling, everything that you need to do. The quality can be much superior to on-site construction, particularly in environments that are pretty harsh. The outback of Australia, the conditions here in the UAE and the rest of the GCC region, or in the tropical heat of Africa, which is where we've worked a lot. When you can achieve a quality product in a factory, have it signed and approved by the client before it gets to site, you're reducing defects, you're reducing punch list work, it takes a whole lot of pain out of the construction process. It's safe for the workforce. They're not working from heights. They might be doing the 12th floor, but they're working at the ground. They're working in an environment that they get breaks, they get all of the conditions that you can supervise in a factory. Sustainable materials, we heard earlier about sustainability. Straight out of the box, modular construction is very, very highly rated in places like Australia, in Singapore, and in America for meeting LEED and similar conditions because of the recyclability. You can use all of the low VOC paints and finishes, and everything can be done and controlled in the factory. Scalable is what's really, I think, important for hotel people. A lot of modular products you might see are as very expensive, bespoke, one-off houses. But I think the opportunity is for repetition and for volume. And hotels are exactly that. When you want to design and create a 3-star room, a 4-star room, you want to build 15 hotels. You want every room to be at the same quality and the same standard. Doesn't matter which city, which country they're in. And modular can help achieve that. And adaptable, I think, is a really key point. One I wanted to mention here particularly, I know there's been a lot of talk in Qatar on the World Cup coming up in times in the next few years. The possible shortage of hotel rooms and other solutions that have been looked at, from cruise ships to tents in the desert. The beautiful thing about modular buildings is they can be installed quickly, they can be disassembled and removed as well. So there is a capability of being able to build capacity for accommodation and move that product on and not have to compromise on the quality or on the livability of what the product is. So I've got a little video here, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. Can we click on that? Is that going to play? Let's just see if that's going to do anything. It may not. We had a problem earlier with the file format, but don't worry. It's on the internet. I'll be able to point people at it. What that image shows is the factory of the future is already here. Some of the things you might be thinking, some of the things you might be imagining, building space stations on Mars. This is a factory that's in Thailand. It is a fully automated, fully robotic factory that is producing modular houses. And when you see this thing working, there are 9 robotic welding machines, all working in volumetric 3-dimensional space, in a space probably as big as this stage, with a steel frame 3-dimensional model, with all of these robots, something out of Star Wars. And then they move on a production line and everything is put together. We're not working at that level yet here. There's not too many that are, but it is out there. So as much as the 3D printing is new, there's a lot of new ideas and new technology coming out. So in our area, we know that there's been a lot of talk. These are just some headlines about, we talked earlier, the Colliers people did, about the mid-market hotel demand. And mid-market, means that you get repetition and scale. It's not doing big fancy ballrooms, it's not doing fancy restaurants and the big tourism five-star products. It's doing a product that's repeatable and that is something you can do again next year what you did today. Some of the stories that we've seen about the World Cup, some of the calls for what other ideas are out there. And up until now, there has not been a modular manufacturer here in the GCC region who can build this type of product. There's other variations of prefabrication. There's bathroom pods. There are precast systems, and I love all sorts of off-site prefabrication. But the ability to build a complete room in a factory and take it out to a hotel project, I think, is something pretty unique. Some examples of some stories, some of those are from America. Hilton, for example, are doing modular product with a Chinese manufacturer. Citizen M hotels, you're probably all familiar with them. They're being manufactured in Poland at the moment. They were manufactured in the Netherlands originally. So there is examples, proven examples already around the world of what we're talking about. And in places like Austin, Texas, in Melbourne, that's another hotel being built. Everywhere you look, there's examples of this stuff happening. So I think it's not so new that it's never been proven, but it is cutting edge here in the Middle East. So I just wanted to show some examples just to get your creative juices flowing as to what you might be able to achieve. These are some examples again in Melbourne by the company I mentioned earlier, Unitised Build. They've got some fantastic looking product, and that company, one of its founders was an architect, so they had design at the forefront of everything they were doing right from the beginning. And every business has its own individual scale of what they want to achieve and what they want to focus on, and I think they've achieved some really good products. And including 2 weeks ago, this was lifted. It's the world's tallest modular building, 44 levels, built in Melbourne. And I'm going to define that by saying volumetric modular. I know the earlier example we saw in China was 50-odd stories, but it was more a flat pack system, the way they build that. So they build floor decks with all of the walls and fittings lying flat. They lift it and then assemble as they go up. This was the world's tallest fully volumetric building where the actual module cubes are joined together to make a 44-level high-rise apartment building, happening right now in Melbourne as we speak. Citizen M we spoke about before. They've got quite a few examples around the world. They've got a very standardised product. It's only 8 foot wide, it's 40 feet long, the same size as a standard shipping container. Not built from shipping containers, but the same dimensions as shipping containers. And the secret in that is the logistics, the ability to move these things around the world, the ability to be able to lift them with standard cranes, standard fittings. There's an example of one of the latest Citizen M projects being put together in England, and that's pretty recent too, just a few months ago. And you can see in that example the glass curtain wall on the front. That gives a really nice finish and a really nice way to finish that building off. Inside, they can be, probably you've all seen these sort of images about the type of products and materials that a lot of the manufacturers and vendors are bringing onto the market, using lighting, using electronics. And the beautiful thing I like about modular is you can implement a lot of that stuff in a factory environment. You're not having to do it in the heat, in the dust, in the dirt, with unskilled labourers on an unfamiliar site. You can actually include and incorporate systems in a factory-controlled environment. This project I've visited, I've worked with this company. This is a student housing project in Reims in France, up in the Champagne district. It was a very tough site visit, that one, let me tell you. It was built in Shanghai, in China. It was 160 modules taken on ship, taken on truck, assembled on site. Quite a modest project. It was only 160 rooms, but it was significantly faster. I spent time with the French construction contractors that put it together. And because it was a student housing project, it had to open on a certain date, and they were able to get a couple of extra semesters worth of rental return on that project as to a conventional student housing. So you can see the modules are on the right, and then basically the external cladding on the left is installed on site. But the rooms inside each of the boxes are entirely finished and entirely ready to be occupied once the services, electric, power, water is connected. That's an internal view of each of those rooms, and you can see the crane lifting them into position. So imagine stacking Lego boxes. That's really what's happening in that situation. There's been plenty of other hotels built. There's a company in Spain who are building, they built an IBIS budget in that instance. They've built another product called Best Rest, sort of smaller, more compact, and they, that's probably what we've seen. A lot of people might think modular, might think something really sort of low end, but that's not the case. I'm hoping today to try and to put in your minds that you can do anything with the product. It's about the specification, it's about the design. This is a project in Mozambique that Spanish company built. So to build, you can see on the bottom left and in the bottom centre, the ship is being loaded with the modules in Spain and then shipped all the way and assembled in Mozambique, where there is a shortage of construction workers, a shortage of materials, a shortage of everything. Another example, when I was working with Marriott last year, they mentioned a hotel in Africa that they'd be building for 8 years. It is still not open. So 8 years of construction and delays. Another example there. And this, the same company that built the student housing in France. This is a small boutique hotel way in the middle of China. There is nothing out there. It's a beautiful part of the world. And they assembled a 40-room hotel, pardon me, using modular techniques. A project I was working on in Seattle before I came to the UAE is an apartment building. It'll be the first steel frame modular building manufactured in China and imported into America. It's funny how the Americans, sometimes you think they're more advanced, but actually they're not. They're a bit behind in this area, and they're catching up, and they're catching up fast. Another project I was involved with in Los Angeles, a 50 apartment building at quite a high level finish. There's been other hotels in places in Southeast Asia. That's another project that was built in the outback of Australia. That's a mining village. So it's staff accommodation, but it looks like something pretty nice. Swimming pools, tennis courts. The day of the very basic workforce camp, has come and gone in a lot of places, and staff and clients are demanding something a bit more sophisticated. A modular student housing project that's about 7 years old in Canberra, in Australia, again built, that was manufactured in China. So this one, and I think the next slide, that's a really good image showing a Chinese manufactured room module being put into place on an 8-storey student housing project, again in Darwin, in Australia. And the facades are all in place there, and you can see the finishing is just some horizontal and vertical cover strips that are required. Underneath, they built the standard retail sort of shops that are going to be on that concrete podium, but the rooms are all above that. So Red Sea Housing have made the decision to move into the hotel market, which is why we're here today. We think that the 3 sort of 4-star, 2, 3, 4-star product is perfectly suited for what we do. In our factory in Dubai, we have manufactured, heard a question there before about prototype rooms. We've actually manufactured 4 prototype hotel rooms, not to any particular design standard, but we've done them to say to clients that come through, whatever your design standards are, we can do that in our factory. We have a factory in Dubai, we have a factory in Jubail in Saudi Arabia, we have one in Ghana, and we have one in Malaysia. So we've got a pretty good worldwide footprint, and each of those factories are capable of building these steel frame modules. They have a concrete floor, and they have all of the requirements that you need to meet whatever building standards, fire ratings, thermal ratings, acoustic ratings, that they're designed to perform to. So I hope I'm not going too fast, and hopefully there'll be some questions at the end. But there's always some challenges to doing this, and I think the most important thing I've found is that you need to engage with the modular thinking fairly early in the process. You want to be able to incorporate the benefits of modular design and construction all the way through. It's hard to come back and try and turn a conventional design building into a modular project. There's going to be a lot of rework, so that's something I'd recommend. The financing and lending required also takes a little bit of creative thought, and if there's any financiers and bankers here, all countries it's been different. And what I tell people is we're not really in the construction business, we're in the manufacturing and assembly business. So our job in the factory is to have as much that we can have done offline. So we manufacture plumbing assemblies, electrical wiring, spiders. We manufacture bathroom pods in some instances, and we bring those together into the module. So it is about manufacturing components and assembling those. So similarly, the funding is not a traditional construction loan. Generally they wait until the stuff's on site and then they'll do stage payments. This stuff gets built in a factory very fast, and it's not on your site. So there has to be deposits, down payments, guarantees. There's a whole different way of looking at that side. The challenge to meet different building codes in different countries, and we deal with that every day at Red Sea. We've been in 65 countries around the world. So British standard, Russian standard, Australian standard, American standard, whatever standard, the same light fitting has to be made by a manufacturer in a different way and then assembled in the right way. So that's critical and something that's very important to be looked at. And also, there's a lot of head contractors, the actual builders. We're not a builder of 20-storey buildings. We're a modular manufacturer, so we need to work in partnership with contractors. But a lot of contractors are resistant to maybe losing a good part of their building project. But what they should be looking at is what innovations are out there that they can bring to their clients. They can save their clients time, they can save them money, and they can maybe build 2 projects in the time it might have taken to build 1 prior. And I think we all know that innovation and technology is here for the long term. So opportunities that we believe are pretty important, and I think all around the world I've hoped to give you some evidence of that. You can do projects in locations that are difficult to build in, difficult to get to. There maybe is not the right labour, there's no building materials, there's all of the complications of doing that. We also think that you can get market demand much quicker if there's a trend. Collier's identified earlier, maybe a trend in mid-market hotels. You don't need to wait 3 years to build one. We can make a 150-room hotel. We can build 20, 25 rooms a week. So 7 or 8 weeks, you've got a hotel built, finished, ready to be installed. So it could be a matter of months rather than years to build a project. And that, of course, means early occupancy, and the return on investment to the owners is significant. Also, what I think is, and I've had a lot of feedback from brand owners, the people like the Marriotts and the Accors of the world. What they love is that they can get some control over the specification and materials. It might be maintenance. If you've got a chain of 10 hotels, you don't have to have 10 different toilets. You don't have to have 10 different taps. You can start to get a good procurement chain going. You can have a good regime for maintenance and replacement and repair. And also refurbishment when that comes, because everything's been manufactured to the same specification. As much as it is important in the 3-dimensional printer we saw earlier, we follow, and I think the term that we were looking for earlier was the BIM, the Building Information Modelling systems that are out there. And we incorporate a lot of those into what we do, because with the MEP particularly, that needs to be designed well before you get to the site. I know about 2 years ago I had a client and he had to choose his towel rail like 2 years before the building was even going to be anywhere near occupied. And he said, well, I normally do that right at the end. I said, well, no, we need to do it now. We need to know where the screw holes are going to go. We need to know what weight that needs to be. So, there's just a different mindset, but I think the possibilities for owners are quite incredible. So hopefully I've given you a bit of a taste of what's happening around the world in modular construction. I know it's pretty new. The people I've spoken to in Dubai, in Saudi, and now here are really interested and really excited about the opportunities, and hopefully I've given you a flavour of what the potential might be in the future. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes. You're next.
Hi.
Hey,
This is off the chart a bit, so
it's okay.
bear with me.
We'll see how we go.
We've got about 200 million of unemployment around the world at the moment here, and with all these technologies going on, what I get worried about is that when you start doing modular buildings, which is great, back quality, and doing all these technologies, but you're replacing almost like 8 human beings with a robot. How do you guys fixing that problem? Which we are adding more unemployment, more adding value to the capitalism at the moment. So how does that?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, and I've been reading a lot recently about, they call it the fourth industrial wave, which is the robotics and replacement of people in every walk of work. For example, when was the last time you saw your bank teller? You see a machine where you put your card in, that's your bank teller. It will happen. I think what I was going to show, the video I had there of the robotic factory, is probably an odd one out. In our factory, when we're working at full pace, we have 1,000 workers in our factory in Dubai. And they are, as you saw earlier, plumbers, electricians. We do not have robotic welding machines. One, they're expensive to maintain. You've got to have the right conditions in the factory environment. I think that's probably a long way away. And what I've read about the fourth wave of industrialisation is that people need to retrain. I read an article in Australia recently. We're closing down the car manufacturing industry there. There will be no car manufacturing. And the question is, how do you retrain those workers? What else can they do? There are much less people now becoming apprentice plumbers and apprentice carpenters. What other jobs can those people do? So that's a big world question. But I think it's a bit of a way away, and we'll gradually ease into it.
Isabel has a question, but before you ask that question, we actually have a video ready which you wanted to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's. So that's pretty powerful, and I think the thing that I like every time I see it is probably the cleanliness and the safety of that site. They probably dressed it up for the filming, but those guys are working in safe environments, and I think what I see out in the workplace, as much as people want to make that health and safety as important as they can, it's still never going to be perfect, but that's an interesting concept. Any more questions?
Yes, I was wondering how do you tackle refurbishments? If you want to, for example, on many occasions here in the Middle East, you have 20 bays and the client decides to knock down a few of the walls to make larger units. How would you tackle that?
Yeah, that's a good question. As I mentioned, In our construction, we have a steel frame construction, so you've got corner posts and you might have one or two other structural posts in a wall. If it's designed that a module is typically maybe 3.6 metres wide, if you want a double room, you can take those middle walls out because they're not structural. If you can put in a lintel and a beam or something like that, as opposed to sort of precast, some precast steel frame building anywhere else in the world, and the materials can be removed, you can pull tiles up, you can replace them, you can cut holes in walls.